Today we're going to be building 3 different benches. The first is a bench that I built about 6 years ago and has racked up nearly 2.5 million views. It's my spin on the timeless Leopold bench, but this time I'm going to be adding a feature that you guys have been asking about for years. The second is a totally new design inspired by an $1,800 designer chair, which of course we'll be making for a lot less. And finally, the third bench could pretty much double as an outdoor sofa and was inspired by an English garden bench that cost nearly $4,300. The best part is you can build all 3 of these benches in a weekend for less than your next trip to the grocery store. Let's get started. Now for the first bench, this is going to be the simplest bench, and it's actually a classic. It's a bench that I built about 4 years ago out of 4 2x8 8s, and it has made its rounds on YouTube, racking up over millions of views. Not only that, but a few of you have come out and actually put out videos of building the bench yourselves, which I love to see. But there was one feature that a lot of you asked for in the comments, and that was armrests. So today we're not only going to be rebuilding this bench, but we're going to be incorporating that feature out of the existing lumber that we had left over. Now, the thing that I love about this bench is that it can be built with just some common power tools and a few screws, as well as a speed square tape measure, pencil, all of the other tools that you guys called me out in the original video for using. And I've already got the 2 boards that I want to use for the back and the seat. And essentially these are 8-foot boards. We're just going to be cutting them in half. So let's do that now. All right, I've got 4 boards now. Those are gonna be for the seat in the back. Like I said, essentially those are just the 2x8x8s cut in half, so they should be about 4 feet each. Now we're going to be cutting the long legs. We're gonna get 2 legs out of this board, and we need to cut a 30-degree bevel on the top and the bottom. Now the way that we're gonna do that is using a speed square. Obviously you could do this on the miter saw, but I wanted to show you guys that don't necessarily have a miter saw setup. So you can take a speed square, and all you got to do is pivot this around your pivot point, and you go all the way over to 30 degrees where it says 30 degrees on the 45-degree angle on the speed square. Kind of set that up and draw your line, and now you have a 30-degree line. We'll just extend that line all the way over and then make that cut. Now, the long leg itself is 38 inches from point to point, or each side is 38 inches. So we'll just grab a line with our tape measure off of that point and mark 38 inches. And then we'll just repeat the process here with that speed square and getting that 30-degree bevel. 1 leg down, and then repeat the process on this other board. Now, we're just gonna cut a nice little taper across the back. This is the back leg, so this is going to go like this, but I really just want to chop this off because it just looks better. So to do that, we're gonna measure from the point 4.5 inches on the top of the bench. And then we're gonna measure from the point down the back 17 inches. So now we have our 2 points, and then we'll just use a straight edge, whatever you can find, an extra scrap piece of wood or a level or whatever it is, something straight to mark from point to point. That is the line that we're gonna be cutting. Now, I'm also going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other leg, 4.5, and all right, let's get cutting. So our back pieces are cut. Essentially, these are gonna go like this, and then our back is going to get attached to this line right here, which will give us the proper angle for the back. Now we need to cut the shorter leg, which is gonna support the seat, as well as be a foot for the bench. For the short leg, it's essentially kind of the same process, but with different angles and lengths. You're gonna first need a 40-degree cut at the end of the board. So we'll go ahead and use the same process with our speed square to get that 40-degree line, and we'll make that cut. But first, I wanted to lay out how everything's gonna go. We got a 40-degree cut. 19 inches over, and then a 45 degree. So we'll do that now. Mark 19 inches over. And then this time we don't have to pivot because this angle is 45. One of the biggest comments that I got in the video when I built this bench was which angle goes down on the ground, 40 or 45 degree. Now this leg is going to be at the back of the bench. This is going to be at the front of the bench. The bench seat actually has a recline of 5 degrees. So this should be sloping back, right? So your 45 degree cut is going to go at the top or the top front of the bench, and this will support the seat and give you that nice little angle. Now we just need to repeat that process. We've got 45 degrees here, so now we need a 40 degree cut over here, and for that we can use this one as a template. Now, this is the excess that I was talking about, and this is what we'll save to use for our armrest. So what I'm going to do is actually just go ahead and cut 2 20-inch long boards out of this. Okay, now I don't want my armrest to be this wide, so we need to cut these down to 4 inches. Just going to make a 4-inch mark at each end of this board and then connect it with my straight edge. Now these will eventually be our armrests. We're gonna have to do a little bit more to them, but we'll save that for later. Now these are essentially how the legs are gonna go. Now you kind of want to lay them out like this, kind of mirrored. And the reason for that is going to be because you're going to screw through here and you want your screws to kind of be hidden on the inside of the bench. That way there's no exposed screws on the sides of the bench. In order to orient these boards how you want them, what I did was I kind of threw together some measurements. We're gonna come up 5 3/8 from the back point on this, on the base of this leg, 5 3/8. And we're gonna go from the point 12 1/4. And then I'm just going to use my straight edge to connect those two. So what we're gonna do is kind of line this up, and then I'm gonna take my scrap board. The other thing is I did provide another measurement, which is 6 inches on the inside of this shorter leg. We can mark that there and kind of have an idea of where this point is going to line up. Should be about there. But we're gonna use a scrap piece of wood to kind of simulate the ground and just make sure that this bench is going to rest nice and flat on the ground. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw 4 screws in this. And then we'll just repeat the process on the other leg. Now, one thing I did want to point out again is that when you're aligning these, it's gonna be hard to remember which one's 40 and which one's 45, unless you threw a straight edge on it. But essentially, the biggest part is you're going to want this to have a recline, right? So you're gonna want the shallower side of this board to be at the back. There's your leg. So now is where it gets a little interesting. Essentially, this is going to be our seat. Front of this seat is going to overhang this point by 1.5 inches. So measure that out and hope that this doesn't fall. And now we can go down to this end, this guy lined up, and repeat the process. Now we just take another one of these boards and add it to the back. And I think in the plans it calls for 1/2 inch spacing. Doesn't need to be exactly that. I usually just use a carpenter's pencil to space things out. But what you will notice is that you can really only get 1 screw in here. And the second screw in the back will actually go through the side of this leg. Okay, now all we have left is to put the back on this bench. Now, as far as the back goes, you can kind of get this in there however best works for you. Now, one thing I did notice is that my legs were the top of the legs were kind of cocked in, so I actually have enough tension to kind of get this board where I need it, and then I can secure it. Now, as far as where to place this board, the top edge of this, I just kind of flushed up with the very top of this board, and obviously the back of it, you want to be flush with this. So what I'm gonna do, kind of get some screws started here. Come on, baby. There you have it, our bench. Now, time for the armrest. Now, when it comes to the arms, essentially, we just need to cut out a notch with a nice little taper to kind of feed into that side of that leg. So we're going to mark out 1.5 inches, because that's the material that we need to cut away. And then we're gonna come up 7 inches right here and 12 inches on the side. So at the 7-inch mark, we want to again mark out 1.5. This is going to be straight from here to here, and then angled from here to our 12-inch mark. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by cutting this with the circular saw up to that mark. Now we just need to finish off that cut with a jigsaw. So now we just need to repeat the process on this board. 7 and 12, 1.5 inches. Now, all we need to do is clean up these edges with a little sander, and round over will ease all the corners as well as on the bench, and then we'll go ahead and get these things mounted. So as far as the armrests go, essentially all that we need to do is measure up 25 inches and make a mark. This will be the exact same for both sides. So then we take a level and we get that nice and level, and then we mark it. So our armrest is going to go just like this. Now, the issue is that we've got some space here, so we really need to fasten these from the inside. So I'm gonna try to clamp this in place so that we can screw it from the inside. Double check that this is nice and level. Not bad. Kind of wish it was a little bit longer, honestly, and maybe a little bit higher. Let's try a little bit higher. And I will adjust these measurements in the plans, which, by the way, the plans are going to be available in a QR code that you can scan on the screen. So go ahead and scan those if you want to build this bench, and you'll get all my new set of plans with the armrests. And that's with the armrest in the correct locations. Yeah, that's better. And that's pretty stiff. I don't think I would pick the bench up with it, but we can tighten these up. I guess you can pick the bench up with it. Might get loose over time, but I like it. It's kind of like a floating armrest. Doesn't mess up the detail of the side. I think it looks pretty sharp. So now we just need to do the same thing for the other side. So instead of 25, it'll be 26.5. All right, I'm gonna be totally honest with you. These armrests are just not very stable, or not stable enough for my liking. So this was one of the offcuts from the armrest itself, and I was able to kind of fashion an angled piece. This is 10 inches across the bottom. We've got a 20-degree cut here and a 40-degree cut on this side. But essentially, this is gonna go like this. I think this is a nice addition. It's not gonna take away from the design of the bench. It kind of matches all the other angles, and I think it'll do what we need to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this installed and see how it goes. That is much better. Yeah. All right, let's cut another one for the other side. And there you have it. Bench number 1 is done. I actually love how it turned out with the armrest. I think they're a great addition just for getting in and out of the bench. And I think they go with the bench, the angles and all that stuff. It doesn't really take away from the design, which I like a lot. Now, as far as the total cost for this bench, I used 4 2x8/8. That is it. I did not for the armrest. I was able to get that out of the scrap from those 4, and that comes in at $42.72. Now, if you want to tack on the price of the screws, you can get a box of 2.5-inch exterior wood screws for about $10. So we'll round that up to $52.72 to build this bench. If you want the plans to build this bench, just scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to get those plans. Now, without further ado, let's move on to bench number 2. Look at that. A poet? Didn't even know it. We are on to bench number 2, and I actually really like this design. This is a new design, and for this, we're going to be using 2 4x4s, 2 2x8s, a 2x4, and a 2x6. Now, I will admit that this is not going to be the best use of this lumber. However, if you're making multiples, you know, you can probably make it work or buy less lumber for multiples. Nevertheless, I'm going to get to cut up the lumber. I'm going to have a cut list in the plans. So if you want more details on that, but honestly, I think you've seen me cut up enough lumber so far in this video. So how about a nice little montage? So these 4x4s are going to be our legs. And to be honest with you, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this part or if this is going to work. I think I've come up with an idea, but essentially they're going to rest like this, and it's going to kind of create an A. But the issue is I need to kind of cut these on a 90-degree angle to that, but you can't just put this on a miter saw like that. So I need some stabilities. I know all this isn't making sense, but I promise you it will in a second. So what I'm going to do is I am going to screw this board to the top of this 4x4. Okay, so that is going to support it against the fence of my miter saw. Now, I did line the end of this board up with the tip. I don't know that that's going to really matter, but I've got to come from the tip over 1.5 inches. Again, I know this might not make sense, but I promise you it will in a couple minutes. I'm going to make a mark 1.5 inches over, confirm that my screw is not in the way, and then we're going to cut this on the miter saw. So like I said, this is going to rest against my fence, and I've got my mark at 1.5 inches from the point. It's pretty aligned. Now let's see if this works and I don't hurt myself. Not bad. This is essentially what the leg will look like, and then the other one will rest. Now we'll do that 3 more times. So these are essentially going to be our legs, and now you can kind of see what I'm talking about how these kind of come together to form this A at the top. They've got a nice flat so they can rest together. Now, I'm going to set these aside for right now. The next thing we need to work on is the other pieces. So I'm going to start with the backrest. These shorter pieces are going to be for the seat itself. These longer ones are going to be actually supporting the back. If I remember correctly, I think we need to come 1 inch from the top. So the back is going to lean like that. We got to come down 1 inch there. And then we need to come down here 9.5. So we'll just use a straight edge to connect those 2 points, and then we'll cut that with a circular saw. Now, much like the last bench, we're going to be cutting out the armrest. Now, these are going to be out of 2x6s, but kind of the same process. We're going to go 12 inches from the top, and we're going to go 6 inches from the bottom. And essentially, we've just got to cut out 1.5 inch material out of back here. So we'll mark out 1.5 inches, and then at that 6 inch mark, we'll mark out 1.5 inches again. Now we can use our straight edge to kind of give us this little diagonal here, and then our straight line here. So we're gonna be cutting this portion out, and I'll do that with a circular saw. We'll do that for both of these, and I'll just go ahead and pierce this out again on this. off with a jigsaw. Now we'll just go ahead and get these sanded up so they're ready for assembly. Okay, I think we've got all the pieces we need together now. We can figure out how this is gonna get assembled. I think I know how this is gonna work. Essentially, what I had with our scrap 4x4, I cut some 1-inch spacers because in order to get these in the right spot, I need some space. So we've got 1-inch spacers, and these, again, are going to be the legs, and those are gonna come together like this, and my armrest is going to go like so. I've already gone ahead and marked 9.5 inches from the front of the armrest to where this needs to connect on these legs. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually going to just apply some glue in here. Not too bad. Okay, now we need to lay out our seat supports. Like that. I'll get some exact measurements and come back to this. So I've cut some 1/2-inch spacers because that is what you actually need. And we're gonna try this again. Okay, that is our leg. And we'll have to figure out exactly where the seat goes. Essentially, the seat's gonna kind of go like this. Now, we need to come up 13 3/8 of an inch. And this is going to be 20 degrees off. We line that up there. Strike. So that's gonna give us a little subtle angle. Now, this board, the point or the end of this board is going to be at that mark, and then the bottom will be along that line. That should be where we need it. What's going on? Why is that off? Oh, something's not right. Okay, we're just gonna have to roll with it. For some reason, this is not as wide as it should be in the design, and I'm sure it probably has something to do with this joint right here. But if I'm gonna have these problems, you guys are probably gonna have these problems too. So again, we're just going to roll with it. I'll get this lined up as best I can, and then we will fasten this to the 4x4 leg. And then for this piece, I know this angle needs to be there. We'll go through the back. Now, normally, per the design, this joint was kind of more in the middle of this 4x4, but you know, we've got to work with what we got. I'm gonna try and sneak one in there. So that is our leg. As you can see, we got our seat support and our back support and our armrests. Now we just need to do that again. Okay, leg 2 is complete. Now for the fun part. This is going to go this. Our seat and our back, pretty much just the same as the other bench, just 2x8s. So the front of this bench is going to get a 1/2 inch overhang. And again, I use my trusty spacer. All right, last board. And now we have bench number 2. And again, this is a new design for me. I actually love this design. The bigger armrests, I think, are very nice. It's kind of like a more upright design, but overall, this bench cost $56.88 to build. That is the lumber itself. If you throw in another 10 bucks for screws, you're at $66.88 to build this bench. Now, I built it out of untreated lumber. The nice thing about that is you can kind of come back and stain this with, I would just use like an outdoor deck stain. You can get those tinted in basically any color that you want. The legs themselves, those are untreated. But the nice thing is that those legs, the 4x4s, are from Lowe's, and I was able to get those in Douglas fir. Douglas fir is a little bit more rot and insect resistant than just say pine. So that's a good option for the legs, or at least better than pine. Not quite as good as treated. Again, you could build this whole thing out of treated and just leave it as is, or add your outdoor deck stain to this in whatever color you choose. Overall, I like the bench. I love how it turned out. And now it's time to get on to bench number 3. Is going to be a little bit more intricate. Let's get started. For the third bench in this, I'm actually very excited about this. This is a new design, just like the last bench was, but it's a little bit different in the way that it's actually only going to be built out of 6 2x4/8 and 6 1x6/8. So it should be a lighter bench, easier to manage as far as moving it around or whatnot, but also it's going to be bigger. So I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work out, but hopefully it does. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting up, or rough cutting up, the lumber and kind of getting it to some more manageable pieces. That way we can kind of figure out how everything's going to come together. I went ahead and got everything cut down to size, or roughly cut down to size. Now there's a few more cuts that I need to make on the table saw, and I'll explain why later, but essentially I'm just going to be taking off one edge of these 2x4, or at least these 4 2x4s, and that's just going to remove that kind of eased edge and give me a nice cut line, or crisp edge, a nice 90-degree angle. Now this board is just going to get ripped into 2x2s, and that is going to act as some supports for our bench. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Now with everything kind of cut down roughly to size, I've got a bunch of weird dimensions and angles that I need to get cut into these 6 boards. Some are gonna be the armrest, and some are going to be the back and the front legs. Those got some nice little angles on them, but we're gonna get those cut down and all that laid out. Those dimensions are all going to be included in the plans. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description to get those. But I'm not going to bore you with all those dimensions, so let's cue that cutting montage. So this is what we're looking at essentially for the side. The back leg and the front leg have those angles cut on them, and that just adds, I think, a lot of character to the bench itself. Now this is going to be the handrail. This has also got a bunch of angles cut into it, and I can't get it all the way down, but that pretty much will go right about there. Now in order to secure these, I'm going to be using pocket holes. Now we're going to put the pocket holes on the inside of this so they won't be seen. So I will take this board, because this is going to be one of the sides, flip that over, and we'll do 2 pocket holes on each end. Now for the pocket holes on these boards, I'm going to be using the 20-volt Craig Rebel. This is their new pocket hole joiner. Obviously everything is all in one, so it's got the drill and all of the fixtures and whatnot that you need to drill those pocket holes accurately. You can easily just use like the Craig 720 or even just the smaller clamp-on version, and those will work just as well. But they sent me this, so I'm going to try it out. New tools. I like trying new tools. So I don't know, it's very easy to use, and it's even got like a little dust collection there, which you can hook a shop vac up to it and do what you need to do. I've already gone ahead and marked out the locations for this guy, so we just need to flip this over, clamp it, and screw it together. Now before I screw these together, I am going to apply a little bit of glue to this joint, and then we'll use just some exterior pocket hole screws to... Now, the reason I kind of made those boards a little bit narrower to cut the eased edge off of the natural 2x4 was for this joint right here, essentially. I didn't want to have this side of the board roll over and have that eased edge. I wanted a nice crisp line here. That way this was nice and smooth. And the same reason applies to this backward. There's our leg. Now I'm going to attach the armrest and that should be good for right now. Okay, there. All right, one down, one more to go. Now for the second one, I'm gonna use the first one as a template. So I've got the first one there, completed side, and I want these to be exactly the same. All right, so that is where that's gonna go. We're gonna get my pencil and kind of mark these lines. All right, let's get this together. Before I go any further, what I want to do is actually sand all of this down. Now these straight edges that I put on here, the ones that are exposed, I want to ease those over to kind of match the other profile or edge of those 2x4s. So we'll roll those edges over, get everything nice and smooth on both sides, and then we'll continue on with the assembly. The front and the rear stretcher are these longer 2x4s that I've cut. That's what's going to connect the sides together and support the seat and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and actually drill the pocket holes in each end of those, and then we can start assembling all of that. Now the rear stretcher is actually going to support the back as well. So that is going to come in on an angle, and I'm marking that right now. This should be a 15-degree angle to this side. So I've got that marked. I've got my front stretcher marked where that needs to go. Now we'll just put some glue on these ends and get these screwed in place. This will be helpful. Now that is like a pocket hole clamp, which is handy for exactly this thing. Now the back and the seat are going to be made up of 1x6s. The seat has 3 1x6s and the back has a bunch of these slats that are going to go vertically, as well as one long board across the top. These are all going to get pocket holes, which means I've got a ton to drill. So let's go. I went in and installed the back, and that turned out pretty good. I'm hoping that that top piece is strong enough with all of these boards connected to it. Hopefully that stiffens it up enough to where it won't flex when you lean back against it. Now I've got to install the seat, and what I did for that is I actually ended up just clamping a couple boards to the top of these pieces on the sides, and then I've got my 1/2-inch spacers. So my theory here is to set these, because we got a 1/2 inch gap there, and that board that's clamped should keep it where I need it. Now we just pocket screw those in, and these are just gonna kind of temporarily hold these in and make it so that I don't have any fasteners showing through the face of it. But I'm gonna come back in here and add some more support so that these screws aren't the only thing holding the seat. So the supports are these 2x2s. These are gonna go in here, and these are gonna get screwed to the side, and that's gonna hold everything up. All right, now we've got these supports, which you kind of got to finagle in there. These supports will support the weight of the seats, and we just need to secure those with these 2.5-inch pocket hole screws, and then the seat itself will be supported by those, so we shouldn't have that much flex. think I've got every other length screw except for a 2-inch screw. So we're gonna see how it works without. Moment of truth. All right, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't really like how these boards are on here, so I'm gonna do this a little different. I'm actually gonna take these off and get rid of the pocket hole screws, get all of these support structure underneath of this where I want it to go, and then I'll attach the boards. Trying to attach the boards first, I just noticed there was kind of some uneven spots here. This board's a little proud. That didn't work out exactly like I thought, and the gaps, in my opinion, are a little bit too big. So we'll be able to kind of visually set those in here where we want. But honestly, this bench is nice. I think it's plenty sturdy, and it's a deeper bench, but it's comfortable. I think it looks sharp. And the other cool thing is it's like super light. So just the 1x6s and the 2x4s don't really weigh that much. Overall, I like it, but I've got to fix something first. So what I ended up doing was just taking a little piece of scrap and using that as a spacer to mount these supports where I needed to go. And rather than screwing the slats down, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to put some glue down on here and then brad nail them into place. So let's try and figure out where we want these gaps. I definitely want them smaller than before. I like that. I think that's probably about 1/8 of an inch gap rather than a 1/2 inch gap. Right. There it is. I think that looks pretty good. And that concludes bench number 3. Honestly, I love how it turned out. I think it looks sharp. It's very light and easy to move around. And I ended up only using 6 1x6/8 and 5 2x4/8. That came to a total cost of $70.88 in lumber. If you had $10 in screws there, you round that cost up to $80 to build this bench. Now, if you want the plans to build this bench, just scan that QR code right there, or you can click the link in the description. Now, I was able to put some stain and sealer on all 3 of these benches, and for that, I went with Cabot's stain and sealer in a semi-solid, and the color that I get it tinted in, it was Dune Gray. Now, the other thing I was able to find on Amazon were some cushions for the 3rd bench, which I love because you can use this bench with or without cushions. So there you have it, 3 inexpensive benches that you can build in a weekend, but I wanna know which one's your favorite, so hit me up in the comments and let me know. Until next time, be safe and happy building.